yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
Disappointed in the points. Felt like we should have had some more points. We stalled out in the third quarter a couple of times when the defense was really playing well. We got to get that fixed. We'll get in here tomorrow, get that looked at. But we always like to learn those lessons in winning. And so anytime we can do that, it's a really good deal. We had a lot of bright spots, but there's just some little things that we still got to clean up through 4 games. We needed to see it so we can fix it before we get into conference play, which we're certainly looking forward to.
Any questions? Bishop.
Charles Bishop, Dr. Cavil is inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I'll start with Chase and I'll pivot to you, Coach. Chase, talk about your offensive line tonight. You had 186 yards, but you had some really huge holes that you were popping.
Yes, sir. My big dogs up front, they took care of everything for me. You know, they paved the way for me. And, you know what I'm saying? I just took a good read and just followed my guys. And I'm really proud of them. They worked very hard. They get coached hard, and they were sprung the correct way. So, you know, my guys, I'm proud of them.
Coach, what does it say about your team, especially the offensive line, that you can finish a game in the manner in which you did with a strong running game?
Yeah, you know, these guys, you know, you ask any one of our players, we do some stuff at the end of practice for times like that so that these guys can finish the game and make sure we out-physical the opponent when it matters in the fourth quarter. And so I was really proud to see it really work. We've been doing this for a long time, man. The 2 games we won, we've had to finish in the end. And we shouldn't have had to do that one like that today. But we seem to thrive in those moments. And then anytime those guys up front, we got some injuries. We got some guys that are missing up front. So it's encouraging that some guys that had to shuffle the O-line were able to still do that in these backs. Chase along with Lamaje. You know, Lamaje, this was his first game back. And so for both of them to have over 100 yards rushing with a shuffled offensive line, it certainly makes us proud as a staff.
Hey, Coach.
Let's go ahead and cut it there, AD. I want to say welcome to episode 712 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show is covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. In short, we just call it HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, who is not just on the side. He's here, but he's having a little technical difficulty. We'll see if we'll be able to get that straight for him. Charles Bishop, as well as A.D. Drew. We're filming from our home studios in Sydney, Signal Live, KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer, if you would. Ralph Cooper still bringing it home in the beautiful home, Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, yeah, we've done at Prairie View. Shout out to Dave, man. Dave jumped on the site last week after the big victory. He's gone, so I do want to give some cigars to those that have had the victories and are true with it. Some folks like Drew, he true with it. Regardless what goes on, he gonna be there. He gonna get it done.
Unless I'm on the plane.
Other folks, right? Unless you're on the plane. But even I seen you try to get it done there. Sending text messages. Only you're on video because they literally don't allow it on the plane. With that being said, and he's still watching on the plane, pays for the extra fee and everything. Some folks, big boys, big time. Charles Bishop, how you doing this morning?
Doing well, Dr. Cavil. I want to send a huge shout out to the men of Omega Psi Phi. They took care of your boy last night, man. Those Prairie View alumni cues. Had your boy out there to tailgate a little bit longer than I expected last night.
I saw you. I knew you was trapped. I tried to get you out of there. I said, okay. I know these boys to all they left, man. That's the ones down there Roll Theta. They just
They showed you boys some good D9 love last night. So.
They sent Charles up. Come on, Charles. Come on. Yeah, there's a lot of those golf partners of Charles. So they try to find a way to get some of that money back, bring him back. I know what that is. Shout out to John Grant. He likes to be on them links too. For some of these folks, I just don't know about when you talk about it that way. But wanted to say who stood out, teams and players. Want to do some little talk about the helmet sticker, get into Big Ben, what he represented in terms of his history. 100 years in terms of when he first landed in the SWAC in 1925, playing in 1929, played in the inaugural State Fair Classic. We'll get into a little bit of that. And so bringing back the helmet sticker. Bringing back the helmet sticker. Big Ben helmet sticker is back inside the lab as we unveil our top 7 today. And when you think about that, I wanted to acknowledge Chris Mosley, 8 yards rushing. He was obviously acknowledged, not just by us as like we always do, but credit to ESPN's college football final. Of course, he was acknowledged for his performance, those 168 yards, 11 rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns in the big win, huge win. We'll talk about the score in the second segment over A&T, which I was teaching you about Dave. He's not here. We're going to have to make sure that he does the Windsor report. Maybe he'll kind of be into it by then. But shout out to Joey Galloway, the analyst there on ESPN, to get that done. I'm going to go to you, Charles. Who do you want to give your Big Ben helmet sticker to? And then I'll bring in Drew. But that's mine.
Yeah, I got a chance to see it up close. I'm going to give my helmet sticker to Chase Bingman. 18 rushes for 180 yards. Also added 4 catches for 15 yards. But let me tell you something. He got some snake hips about himself. He got some shake in the hole. So, I mean, he hit the spin cycle a couple times last night. He was exciting to watch. So, Chase Beamer gets my helmet sticker.
No doubt about it. Shout out to Chase Beamer. He getting it done. And I'm going to add a little one for you. I'm going to do a helmet sticker to that line. Over all those yards, 300 yards, and the final drive where they just literally ran out the clock. That's how you talk about finishing a game in terms of drive. Big time. I'd like to see that. Drew, who's your helmet sticker going to?
I'm going off the radar, but with a 3-1 record, I've got to pick somebody from Delaware State, a team that has been making us watch him. How about James Jones? Yeah. Only 7 rushes on the day, 111 yards, including a long of 90 yards and a 1 touchdown. Hit pay dirt 1 time in Delaware State's 39-10 victory over St. Francis.
Good one. I'm going to add one more. I'm going to go back to Grambling. I'm going to actually do 2. I'm going to make this 2. I'm going to go to Grambling. I'm going to go to T-Stat. 14-26, 179 yards and 1 touchdown. The numbers may not be gaudy, but when you think about what he was able to do last week with the drive, yeah, it was Kentucky State, but it was do or die. And I don't say that lightly on Kentucky State because they deserve a lot of recognition in terms
I saw that up front yesterday.
Exactly, right? And Drew will drop a little dime on that when we get in framing on that. But then he decides to do it again this week against East Texas A&M Lions FCS program. So I want to give a shout out to T-Set, Grambling in terms of the mindset, finish. You know, coaches talk about that. You heard Coach Jackson talk about that drive. Charles asked a question on that. But they show what that means, both offensively from the quarterback and the rest of the team players getting it done. Just the tie game last week to take it to overtime where the defense didn't stop, even to the point that some people saw it a little bit as controversial, right? But they did what they were supposed to do. They play until the whistle, right? And then this week, T-Set comes back and the team, they get it done with a big victory in terms of holding things out, even forcing a big sack that led to a field goal that was 50 plus yards, clearly out of the reach of East Texas A&M. Then the last helmet sticker, I want to give to the SWAC. Trivial question. When is the last time the SWAC has won 2 non-conference FCS games, particularly against what I refer to as HBCUs, historically white college, in the same weekend, same Saturday? So shout out to the SWAC, particularly for Prairie View and Grambling as programs, those ADs, those presidents, those behind hidden oftentimes in terms of important to get it done. Obviously, the coaches and the players. Shout out to those fans and alumni from Grambling and Prairie View representing the SWAC and getting 2 FCS wins in the same weekend. Can't remember the date, so I don't want to say it's never been done, but it certainly hasn't been done in the recent.
It's been a long time.
Exactly. That's how deep it is. You can't even do your chat GPT. Fine. You have to go to our SID historians and tell them to dig in the crates. So I thought that's worth representing and getting. Let's see if we can get Mike if he's gotten stuff going. Mike, how you doing? Yeah, he got his fingers up. He's working on it. Mike, still working on it. We'll see if we can get him going as he's struggling in there. Appreciate you, Mike, for trying. Keep trying. We'll see if we can get you right. With that being said, let me go back to you, Charles. Just in terms of this weekend, what kind of stood out to you, whether it's a team player? I know you acknowledged the helmet sticker.
Yeah.
We'll save the ledge until next segment. So I'm not talking about the ledge yet, but what stood out to you in terms of what took place this week?
What stood out for me is in a rivalry game that you put up 765 yards of total offense. I just knew I read that wrong when I saw it, and then I looked at the score. And I said, "Oh my God, they wouldn't finish taking their foot off their throat." So North Carolina Central. I got to give it to them on that. I mean, Walker Harris went nuts in that game, threw for almost 400 yards. But I mean that stood out, and then. You had a lot of 100-yard rushes this weekend. Like, it was a really standout weekend for a lot of ball carriers around HBCU football. So that's really what stood out. And, I think, Coach Jackson kind of touched on something with regards to his quarterback, in terms of managing the game. But, a strong running game can take you a long way during the course of the season. And we saw some teams finish out games with their running attack and the offensive line carrying the final 4 minutes of the game.
Yeah, those questions about QB Walker, one, may disappear at least for a little while. Then shout out to Trey Oliver. What's interesting, he said he has a personal relation. He likes Gibbs. They have a problem with A&T. I hate to see what happens if he don't like him.
I hate what he does to enemies. My goodness.
Hey, Drew, you're on mute. Go ahead, back here. We want to catch your comment.
I was going to say, you're going to have to buy me a lot of liquor at the bar to make me forget about that one, dog.
You ain't lying. I'm not sure there's enough in the bar to make you. Well, I get to drink a couple of them. You'll be all right. Drew, let me go to you in terms of what stood out, what direction you want to go into. Obviously, if you need, you can dip into some mid-major to give that as well.
Well, I'm going to do a 2-for-1, Dr. Cavil. I'm going to talk about a major team while dipping into a mid-major with a crossover matchup between the FCS and a Division 2. How about what Bethune-Cookman in the get-right game did against Edward Waters? The numbers were not overwhelming, but 4 picks is 4 picks. 4 interceptions on the day for the Wildcats. So, that's how you beat a Division 2 team or a lower level team. FBSs do it to FCSs to D2s and NAIAs, but that's how you take the heart away, because when you have drives and then you just throw the ball right to the other person, between that and fumbles, the lower level team has no chance.
Good stuff. Good points. I agree. It's one of those years. That matchup, particularly, I want to give a shout out to Bethune-Cookman. Everybody, just about everybody, wanted to give it to Edward Waters. I think it was the feel-good story. I wasn't there yet, especially after I see them all the points. I think, Charles, you mentioned that. Even the UAB, Drew, talked about the number of points that they put up against South Carolina State. And fascinating when we get in those scores. We'll talk about a little more about South Carolina State. But with that being said, shout out to Bethune-Cookman for not 2 years in a row, where last year, Division II, and when everybody was putting their heads down on them and just thinking that Jenkins was going to come in there, and I'm sure he had every mentality to do it, but Bethune-Cookman stood up and made sure they said not so fast.
Can I get one more in, Dr. Cavil, quickly?
Yes.
How about the Bison exercising the demons of the Pirates and in a convincing fashion?
Huge. That was huge.
You know, not we had to go on the game with it drive to do it or put it on the foot of our kicker. No, they just took the hearts of the Pirates away at Audi Field yesterday.
Yeah, you sure right. Shout out to Howard getting off the skid, and they made sure that's how you do it. As you said, Drew, you don't even make it close. That way, no question. And Howard, Hampton talking about going on the skid, you can see just at that level how much a roller coaster, how different might this game be if they finish that game against A&T.
Do we have volume, Mike?
Yes, we do.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. How much of the engineering skills did you have to pull out, man?
Feels right with the world.
Man, I bought this fancy screen thing to travel with to attach to my computer, and all I did was disconnect that, and for whatever reason, and
yeah.
Sometimes
when you do
things.
this, it's a simple thing. Sometimes when you have the multiple devices in terms of StreamYard feeding in, it's hard for it to recognize. Mike, we're going to save some of your thoughts for the next segment. We're going to take our first break, come back on the other side. Let's get into the top 7 and see how they did. Get Mike's thought on that and allow him, if he wants to, even give a Big Ben helmet sticker. But before we do that, I do have one thing I want to say, Drew, as I acknowledge. You can bring up that picture. As you see, I'm wearing a old gold shirt, one chapter, one shield. And I wanted to give some love to what I would refer to as young brother. He's matured beyond a year. He played quarterback at Prairie View. Got us a big home win when Charles, you had kind of gone through this with Jackson State and told you, and I said, I can relate, Charles, probably much worse than you can. Charles kind of chuckled, so I was able to at least bring a smile to his face. But this young man played quarterback and helped us get one of those big wins against Valley for homecoming. I made sure within NCAA guidelines, it's all changed now that he was set up for sure in terms of me being able to recognize. Then found out later that he was joining Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Obviously, Mike had the luxury of making sure that I understood what that meant, bringing it in. And Charles obviously had a huge connection. He brought me into that Jackson State brotherhood in terms of that. And Drew, over the years, has seen it at different institutions from different organizations of what that means in terms of that. So he certainly understands when we talk about the HBCU sports culture, that it goes beyond just the band as well, obviously the teams and coaches, but that connection that we see. Well, this is Deshaun Baker handing me my Hall of Fame one chapter, one shield shirt. Idea born from his thought process about bringing the Alphas of Prairie View, including Eta Gamma chapter, alumni chapter, back together in terms of sharing that bond. Line name Rex Shop 11, which lets you know where he's from, what he represents in terms of Houston. 18 IMK, that is fall 2000 when he crossed those brown fans. So a shout out to my man, if you would, Deshaun Baker, in terms of continue to push forward and get done. He's helped start the graduate chapter in Missouri. So I want to give him a lot of love because he's holding out that light for sure. Light is so bright, you see he's out there in that sun with them shades on. So shout out to Deshaun Baker. Let's take our first break and come back on the other side and get into the top 7 in regards to what happened last week, past week.
When you're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics, there's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Planning an event? From weddings to corporate functions, CMJ Events LLC brings over 15 years of experience to make your vision a reality. Based in Metro Atlanta and serving statewide, even internationally, we provide versatile event planning and authentic catering cuisines tailored to your needs. Whether it's pre-game meals for student athletes, fundraisers, weddings, corporate functions, CMJ Events LLC is your one-stop solution for exceptional service and unforgettable food. Our diverse culinary heritage means we cater to all cultural taste, dietary needs, and food restrictions, making every meal uniquely yours. Let's make your next event unforgettable. Visit us on all social media at CMJ Events LLC or email us at cmjeventsllc@gmail.com. Also give us a call at 404-664-3882 so that we can start planning now.
College football fans, a champion will rise in Atlanta on December 13th. MEAC champion, SWAC champion, the 10th Cricket Celebration Bowl, crowning an HBCU national champion. For event and ticket information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a statement, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. HBCU Image, a Kenny T's company.
ESPN Events presents Red Lobster Band of the Year. Returning to Atlanta on December 12th, 4 bands will qualify for the big stage, where 2 national champions will be crowned. Follow us for rankings updates throughout the season, and join us on December 12th. For event and ticket information, visit bandoftheyear.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and AD Drew. I want to get into the top 7, how they did last week in terms of the scores. So let's see if we can jump into that a little bit right now in terms of giving you an update. As I said, the Big Ben Senior HBCU Award. I wanted to give a little love before we get into that. During the first decade of the SWAC creation in 1920, from 1925, 1929, there was a gentleman nicknamed Big Ben who distinguished himself collegiately, academically, fraternally as a member of the Wiley College team, as a SWAC All-American champion and Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity member. Obviously, at the time they were saying pledgees, 1925, initiated in 1926. But yeah, that oftentimes they spent a long time in the process. He was a fullback and a member of the Wildcat 11. He excelled outside the Eurocentric framing of the American football collegiate context of that era. Played in that inaugural, as we'll talk a little bit about, 100 years celebration of the State Fair Classic. The day of the Negroes were able to go to the fair at that time, the terminology they used, but you see what he did against as a Wiley player, beating up on Bishop, Langston, Prairie View at the time, and more. So I wanted to give him a specific shout out in terms of what it looked like. Continued to do the work, Charles, after he finished illustrious career, with included a national champion, HBCU championship, 4 to 5 years, won the SWAC. And in fact, they changed the rules in terms of how many years you could play. He played for 5. They went with the proverbial 4. You saw that change around because they just didn't want to deal with him anymore in terms of just how bad he was on that gridiron. But yes, great uncle of mine. Just wanted to make sure I gave some love to him. He afterwards he refereed in that Turkey Day Classic, learned in this era, if you would, in terms of the high school with the great segregated high schools of Jack Yates High and Wheatley High. Legendary crowds in that terms of game. He was a referee for that, refereed in SWAC in this area in terms of the thing. So carry that as a principal of a high school. So shout out to Big Ben in terms of what he was able to do. Let's go on to the top 7 games in terms of that. This is last week's top 7 ranking, if you would. You see Delaware State, Howard, Alabama A&M, North Carolina Central, Alabama State, South Carolina State Bulldogs, and Jackson State at the number 1 spot. Let's go get into these scores. We'll pull up the first one, Jackson State, to the open date, so they didn't play as they prepare next week. And our last segment, we'll get and talk about SWAC getting officially kicked off when you have all those teams playing, all 12 matchups, 6 games. It'll be fascinating. Jackson State will go to Baton Rouge, play Southern, so it'll be fascinating when they always get together. Let's go to number 2. Yeah, it's South Carolina State, South. The Bulls there, South Florida, took it to them 63-14. They fall to 2-2 on the season. Number 3. Had an open day. That's Alabama State. They have an intriguing matchup against FAMU. We'll get a chance to kick it off on the Eastern Division. Again, we'll get to the last set. Get these gentlemen's thoughts on that. Let's go to number 4. This is the score that Charles brought up to us. Shout out to Joshua Sim Sr. You know, tonight on HBCU Nightly, he's going to have more fun than any of us could imagine.
He probably still having fun.
Exactly. The Aggies should actually be 1-3. I don't want to take away their win. They did beat Hampton last week. It took the last minute to get it done. 62-20. Not enough talk in that game in terms of the Aggies to get it done. But it is what it is. Sometimes these things happen. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is Alabama A&M. They do what they're supposed to do to a Lane team. They're struggling. They go to 3-1, put up some points, 49-7. Had a shutout late in that game, but shout out to Lane being able to get on the board. Let's go to number 6. Howard gets that proverbial cigar as a program. They get their win over Hampton, and they do it in dominating fashion as Howard quietly improves to 3-1 as previous week's number 16, 34-7 was that matchup of the Pirates, and the Pirates continue to struggle. It's a team that over the last couple of years, they were able to do relatively well in terms of the HBCU competition, and even to a degree in the CAA, Colonial Athletic Association, known as the Coastal Athletic Association. Not this year. Gave away their proverbial win to A&T last week. First time A&T got a FCS Division I in some time. Let you know where Hampton is right now. Number 7. Delaware State, probably the surprise of us all. Coach Jackson, quietly, and maybe not for too long, getting it done over there, getting some good quality FCS wins, doing what you're supposed to do against those HBCU Division II programs. They improved to 3-1, defeating Flames there 39-10 in terms of St. Francis. Team that is moving from Division 1 to Division 3. But they, again, did what you're supposed to do to a program that is struggling. 39-10, solid win. Let me go to you, Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of these scores? Anything stood out? Top 7 teams here.
Yes. Many of you, I think, sounds like CB pointed out the battle of North Carolina Central and A&T. I didn't think it would be done in that fashion. So, man, and that's an understatement. But the one that stands out the most to me, if you're asking me, is the Howard game. I watched that game. And there should be a statistic. You know how in volleyball we talk about kills and digs? There should be a stat. If you watch that game, Howard had some kill shots. Seriously, their defense came to play. You talking about dominate? I'm talking about 3-4 kills. So I wish we could apply that stat somewhere because that game is where it applies. Howard dominated that game from start to mostly finish. Hampton made a couple of mistakes. You can say that, but man, that's the game that stood out. I did not think it would be that close. I thought Howard would win, but not like that. To me, that score does not signify how bad Howard beat up on Hampton. So
Fascinating. Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of the top 7?
They were not in the top 7, but can I go off just a little bit to Grambling? Can I go to Grambling?
They are top 10. They receiving votes. Yes, you
right. They receive votes, and realistically, in a game that they did not statistically dominate, they found a way to get the W once again.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks in a row in a game that they very well could have been beaten. They have found a way to get a W. And it's not about the numbers, but as we get ready for conference play, does that give them an air of confidence that if we are in the ball game late, that we're going to be able to beat whoever our opponent is? That's what that Grambling has done these last couple of weeks to me is something that I want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, can I add to that? Because I laid off that one, but if Drew is right, if you see that game, I saw parts of that game as well. If you saw that was Texas A&M losing that game, or East Texas now. East Texas, they lost that game versus Grambling win that game. You really got the feeling if you saw any parts of the quarter. So for me, Drew, that to me gives ammo to the teams that are going to play Grambling more so than Grambling's ability. Look, Grambling played these teams and they really should have lost. Really did lose in the charge, but to me, I had the thoughts. I was thinking like you, does that make Grambling just that opportunistic team? But I was thinking, if you look at Grambling and how they played, the teams they played, and the ones they should have lost, that gives me a lot of hope. I'm sorry, I wanted to throw that one in on that one, Doc.
I guess it depends on which side of the Grambling coin that you sit on, Mike.
Exactly. I was going to say, Charles would have stood up here and said, they get a chance to make a first statement next week in the State Fair Classic, the 100-year edition. But to your point, I want to say this. But this is also why I gave my helmet sticker to T-Set. They were 2-11 on third down.
Third down, yeah.
Yep.
And one of those came on the last drive to tie the game. To take the lead 31-28 on a drive they needed to have on a 3rd and 10 at the Grambling's 37. So there is something to be said when it gets down to what I won't even say it on the air. But that time, right? Cutting is the terminology a lot of people put out there. They find a way to make the plays. At some point, we may see that the switch turns off, but other times they might just grow confident where if you are not careful, they're going to find a way to stick around. And then, as you said, they will allow you to mess it up. And they will take advantage of you getting it straight. So I don't know, one side of the coin or the other, to your point. Charles?
And to your point, we've seen this before. Sometimes you win games that you're not supposed to, and you look up and you are the SWAC West division winner. We saw it last year with Southern.
Exactly.
How many games did they win? What, 2, 3 in overtime?
2 or 3 in overtime.
Yeah, was just sitting in their corner last year. So you never know where that that will to win, that fight just keeps bubbling up week to week to week to week to week. And all of a sudden you look up and they're
7-1, 6-2.
There you go. It's kind of interesting.
Charles would go that way. He said, overtime. Good point. I would drop the Michael. Go ahead.
What stands out to be in terms of top 7, Delaware State, and they're turning heads week to week. but almost 300 yards rushing yesterday. And week in, week out, we're looking at James Jones, another 100-yard game. Marquise Gillis, another big game. He had 70 yards yesterday. And then they add that element with the quarterback, with Cade Bennett. He's been popping, for plus 50 yards, things of that nature. So, they got some defined playmakers, and that's something that just we haven't seen from Delaware State in quite some time. And it makes them a very intriguing team to sit back and watch. I mean, we got the monsters, South Carolina State, North Carolina Central. Howard has poked their head in there. And now, it's going to make for a very interesting DX season because Delaware State, week in, week out, we know they're going to run the ball and they popping folks in the mouth. I like watching.
Can I ask a question to follow up that?
Sure can.
Will this year, for only the second time in Celebration Bowl history, will we see a BAC representative not from one of the two Carolinas?
Maybe so.
Maybe so.
Howard's been the only one to break the Carolina threshold on Celebration Bowl berths.
Yeah.
Could we be possibly talking about Delaware State in the mix? Because if you'd have told me Morgan State, I would have bought that back in July. I would not have bought Delaware State back in July.
Neither would I.
Well, Morgan State got their get right game, and then they play Miles next week. We'll
the monsters
I'm
are
like
still
Morgan.
sitting out there.
I do want to say
game
about South Carolina State. I'm a little concerned from this perspective. We love what we saw them do against South Carolina, but that looks like a little bit of fool's gold. South Carolina has lost their last two games, and then you see the score against the Bulls of South Florida, USF. So I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. You got to imagine the Bulldogs will get it right when they get in conference play, but there's a little chink because, sometimes we don't look deeper past that game and we all shout out and said, hey, man, they played with South Carolina, and they did. And also that's an indication that you go back and you follow South Carolina, they were top 25, and that's why you also looking at it. But now they're going to fall out of that top 25 after two straight losses where they were pretty much dominated and handled. So I'm interested to see as we kind of move along, what does that look like? Particularly now that you see a lot of people talked about the Bethune-Cookman South Carolina game, that they scored a lot of those points when those players are out. Well, we see this. Well, Charles said this. Sometimes you just need a little excitement, but we also may find out that it's not so much of who they took out, but that Bethune-Cookman finally figured out how they want to do this and who they got. And they took it out on the Edward Waters team that everybody said Edward Waters going to get it done, and it wasn't even close. So I'm intrigued about how these pieces of puzzles, as Mike loves to tell us, the data points. As AD Drew puts on the paper, look at the data. Charles reminds us as well, look at the data. Well, we starting to get these data points adding up. And in fact, we'll see what these data points say in this next segment when we unveil this week's top 7. We see Brian on there. He's a voter in the poll rankings.
Doing history lessons. I like that.
But leave it to Steve Gates to throw a hole in my argument. Steve, but those of us outside of the North-South Carolina region, you just had to shoot my whole argument down. Everybody has either come from North Carolina or South Carolina for the Celebration Bowl. But no, leave it to Steve. Just like, we 2 different states. And thanks for my co-host Brian for having my back up in that chat room, Brian. That's why you my boy, man.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they had the Carolina Classics, but now they want to claim they 2 different states.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a different history lesson. Let's take our second break and come back on the other side. Let's get in this top 7. See anything change this week.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU Sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a statement, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. Whether you're a student or a lifelong supporter, our gear lets you wear your HBCU story with confidence and style. Because when you wear HBCU Image, you're not just wearing clothes. You're wearing culture. You're wearing pride. You're wearing purpose. HBCU.
College football fans, the Cricket Celebration Bowl is celebrating 10 years of crowning an HBCU national champion. A champion will rise at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on December 13th as the MEAC and SWAC champions clash in Atlanta. Join us for championship football, interactive fan experiences, and iconic marching bands. It's an HBCU family reunion that you don't want to miss. See who will be crowned the next HBCU national champion. For event and ticket information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
Compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Mills inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we get into week 4, let's see what's going on. Dropping out this week. As you see the top 7 week 4, September 11th, let's get it going in terms of what this looks like. Dropping out. You don't see this often this early in the season where it kind of solidifies. So besides your top 7, I'd like to get your thoughts in terms of early on. Is this how the top 7 will end up? And if not, how many of the top 7 do you think by the end of the season will be in that top 7 mix? Whose fools go, who's not. Dropping out, nobody did. So let's see who's in the mix behind that. These 3 teams are receiving votes. So they may be one of those teams at the end of the year to throw some ointment in the mix. And it really sets up intriguing statement for the 100th edition of the State Fair Classic there in Dallas, anniversary year. You have essentially 8 and 9 matching up in that game. Grambling State comes in at 3-1, 135 points. Prairie View comes in at essentially number 9, 2-2, 1-0. Again, both of these teams had big victories, so they're going to be excited about wins they just had. And as we acknowledge against FCS, Southland members, fascinating to see how that worked out before the Classic. Mix as the Rattlers essentially sitting in the 10th spot at 1 and 2. They have a intriguing matchup coming up, but again, we'll break that down in that last segment. Let's get in the top 7. We know all teams are here. We'll see if there's any changes. Starting with number 7, we have Delaware State Hornets that improved to 3-1, 157 points, but they remain in the 7th spot. They do add a couple of points in there, so somebody may have pushed them up a little higher. Let's go into number 6 as we move along with the poll rankings. At number 6, we have the Howard Bison. Again, they got a big win over the Hampton University. Got the real HU back in there, the capital, if you would. They are 3-1 on 58 points. 6th place is where they remain. moving us to the 5 spot. At number 5, we have the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. People thought they would be improved, but I'm not sure at this level. Can they maintain it in what looks like a dominant East Division? Should make it even more intriguing to see what that looks like. But they're currently 3-1, 182 points, and they do remain in the 5 spot as they were last week. Bringing us to number 4. At number 4, we go out of the SWAC into the MEAC. North Carolina Central Eagles, 3-2 on the season. People were kind of questioning them as they were moving around. They were at the top of the poll. They slid it, but they've been solid. Do have one first place, 189 points, if you would. Remaining in the 4th spot, they dominated their rival. And the quarterback, Walker, looked good into it. So I think people are feeling good in Eagles country. That being said, let's go to number 3. This is where we get a little change here. South Carolina State Bulldogs. I kind of put this out there a little bit because I had ran the numbers and saw what it looked like. They lost the first place vote. They fall to 2-2, 204 points. And they dropped from the 2 spot, which means we have a number 2 team. We'll see what that looks like. You probably guessed as you thinking the number 1 team probably stayed there, but let's see. Number 2 is Alabama State Hornets. They are a lot of people's favorite. Can they live up to it? They're 2-1, 3 first place votes, 206 points. They move up a spot. They have a first test in the Eastern Division, a hurdle that they haven't been able to get over lately in terms of FAMU. So it'll be fascinating to see how they look in terms of that first trip. In terms of that look like, and they have to go on the road. At number 1, we have none other than Jackson State Tigers sitting in that spot. They've been in that number 1 spot at the top for a minute here, so it's going to be fascinating when you think about them. This is 9 straight weeks, Charles. Going back to week 11 in 2024, the Jackson State Tigers have been in the number 1 spot. So I'm sure for the fans, they feel comfortable with this, and they're getting used to it. But they have a rivalry road test, taking that number 1 spot on the road in Baton Rouge. Again, we'll take a deeper dive in the 4th segment of how everybody thinks about that. But I'm fascinated when you start thinking about some of these matchups going in there. But this is the top 7 in week number 4. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on terms of top 7 this week?
You know, Doc, I'm gonna say this, and I normally don't agree, but I agree this week.
That's 2 in a row, Mike. That's 2 in a row. You all right?
That's 2 weeks in a row. I agree. You could make an argument that Prairie View should be in the top, but who are you going to remove? I mean, Delaware State is playing phenomenal. Howard showed that they can play. So either way, to me, you could switch Howard, Delaware State, and Prairie View. If you look at, who they play, strength of schedule, how they're performing statistically. But other than that, to this week and where we're looking at the lens, I do agree with that. I think you'll start to see some separation when the state of Alabama goes to the state of Florida. So you got Alabama State playing with FAMU, and then you got A&M playing Bethune. So I think you'll start to see, is Bethune better than we thought they were? Is Alabama who we thought they were? I think we know Alabama State is who we thought they are or were, but they'll have a chance to prove it. So I think you'll see a little bit more distinguishment, and you'll have one more data point next week. But this week, I'm going to say I agree with it.
Good stuff. Let me go to you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of the top 7?
I agree. I think this is appropriate. I think, when we did a lot of these preseason shows, I think all of us sort of circled September 27th as that weekend where stuff starts filling out, if you will. And it brings up a sort of an interesting thing with me is this that hurdle year? I mean, we saw A&T get a big win over Hampton. We saw Howard break the streak versus Hampton. We saw SWAC teams winning out of conference, 2 of them this past weekend. Big hurdle for Alabama State going into this September 27th weekend against FAMU. I it's huge. Southern has not beaten Jackson State in a long time. Can they get over the hurdle that has been the monster that is Jackson State? And, up there in the State Fair Classic, that's going to be a huge one as well. This is going to be such a fun week, and we will be lining up people next weekend on the ledge because some people are going to find out who their basketball coach is early. So
I hadn't forgot about your legs, Charles. I'm gonna get to the last segment. I'm trying to tease it out a little early. We're gonna tease it out, and you find a way to sneak it in. I like that. Let me go to you, 80 Drew. What are your thoughts on the top 7?
Charles, why wait to basketball season? That's still another month away. Why not go watch a volleyball program if you're going off the ledge? Your volleyball is playing right now. That gets you through the next month until we get to basketball. And you get used to learning how to cheer for an indoor sport if you go ahead and start with your volleyball team now.
It'd be like Mike. You get to mark down those kids.
Or for some, you may actually discover that you have a women's soccer program on your campus. That's
chalking up the kills.
That allows you to stay outside for those.
Exactly. If you want to be outside.
So you solve the issue for a lot of people.
Yeah. But this was one of those weeks where there were not a whole lot of data points because this is where we start seeing those proverbial buys over the next 3 weeks where teams get that buy-in. So if you're a team like a Jackson State, like an Alabama State, you're probably good wherever you were going in. The only thing you're going to do is move up because that means the teams who actually did play did not handle their business. So everybody except South Carolina State who played this weekend handled their business. So, but South Carolina State stepping outside of their division, we can understand the why. One thing I want to focus on, Dr. Cavil, is a team that's receiving votes. Those 3 teams that are just outside the top 7, that being Prairie View, that being Grambling, and that being Florida A&M. Once again, Grambling picked up their first win against the FCS. We'll leave that one right there. Prairie View, a team that everybody would suspect that we should see on this list, and at some point in time we're going to see on this list. They had a pretty decent, tough non-conference schedule. So has that made this Prairie View A&M team battle tested? And then it's almost like, who the hell you gonna put in that last slot if you're doing the top 10? I mean, let's be real. You had Tennessee State, who is probably, if you do it to number 11, would probably be number 11, Dr. Cavil. Yeah, Tennessee State, whose lone victory is against a North Carolina A&T team, who at that point in time we considered a bad team, but then they get that win. And right now, we really don't know how to evaluate A&T versus a Florida A&M team who's done the sum squad of nothing and has only beat their Division II team. But that Division II team that they beat is one of the top Division II teams in the, in HBCU football. So, if you would, thank God 3 years ago you decided to go away from this top 10, because I would have had hell figuring out who that number 10 team is, Dr. Cavil.
Thank Mike. He told me to run the data when we had a discussion.
Exactly.
Said, Mike, I'm uncomfortable with this top 10. And this is from a marketing perspective. And Mike and I have these conversations. Sometimes they're outside of it in terms of 2 apparel companies. We won't get into that because they hadn't given us any funding. But Mike knows where I'm going with that in terms of who's the top and who is coming for them. But in serious, we talk about these marketing things from that perspective. And Charles always loves when we get in this conversation. And Drew, boots on the ground, that does this for a living from that perspective. And when we mix these things up, when we're having these kind of conversations, there's always a strategy in terms of the decision, whether you're doing a top 5, top 7, top 10. And as we saw more football programs going and playing these money games, I thought it was a bad thing for the brand recognition in terms of having a top 10, particularly when you talk top 21, because when you first did your top 10, it was really including mid-major, and major programs. So you had a larger list sample size to pick from. When I decided to pivot and make sure, again, Charles later got in this conversation when you had programs like Jackson State, when we did that breakdown in terms of those programs over the years that should be looked at perennial programs branding wise, we kind of saw the subsets of how they broke down in a lot of ways of what that looked like. And so that marketing component of this, and I'm extending this a little bit to talk about that in regards to how important it is to understand in this modern age, how do you brand things, particularly in sports for HBCUs, in such a way that it makes sense. And that ultimately was the data that drove us to say, all right, we need to move from a top 10 to a top 7. We still can look at it in terms of top 10 and those receiving votes, to Adri's point, and you can do a marketing when you set up matchups, looking at, number 1 going on the road or 4 versus 5 as we started things off, to help have the talking points where you're branding the HBCU sports culture. And you can do it both in terms of the mid-major and major division. So I just want people to understand when we make these decisions, and I'm putting it out there as the lead person, but I'm talking to experts in the field that care quite a lot about this, either practitioners like Drew and Mike or researchers like Charles and I and others. And we combine that together to do what we think really works in terms of the HBCU sports culture, as we like to talk about it, in terms of HBCU sports pedagogy, the business of sports, of how do you do things ancillary when you're covering this from a media perspective. And those are some of the reasons and deep thought that goes into this, and they're not just random decisions. But that being said, take this last break, come back on the other side, and it's time to get into SWAC play. So we get a chance to talk about some key matchups. There's some in the MEAC as well, not quite there. Got a couple of weeks before we get into their play, but this final list is fascinating. When you talk about 4 teams out of the MEAC, 3 out of the SWAC, the 3 out of the SWAC happen to be in the same division, Eastern Division, while obviously the 4 teams with a 16 football field all in the MEAC. As I asked kind of coming into it, you would think some of these things are going to hit steady, but some going to fall out because we have some matchups where teams have to play each other. So it's going to be interesting to see now, after 2 weeks with things kind of steady state, will it stay in that direction? And who of these teams are going to probably fall out a little bit, and who will be the team to jump in based on those schedules and stuff like that? So let's take a last break and come back on the other side and start talking about key matchups for week number 5.
You're looking for the latest information.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a statement, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. HBCU Image, a Kenny T's company.
College football fans, a champion will rise in Atlanta on December 13th. MEAC champion, SWAC champion, the 10th Cricket Celebration Bowl, crowning an HBCU national champion. For event and ticket information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com. ESPN Events presents Red Lobster Band of the Year. Returning to Atlanta on December 12th, 4 bands will qualify for the big stage, where 2 national champions will be crowned. Follow us for rankings updates throughout the season, and join us on December 12th for event and ticket information. information, visit bandoftheyear.com.
When it comes to professional learning, teachers deserve better. From the leader in online learning, Stride brings you the Stride Professional Development Center, an on-demand library of mobile-friendly courses that gives teachers choice and flexibility, allowing them to learn anytime and anywhere. Our dynamic courses provide bite-sized learning and help educators advance their knowledge while also gaining professional development hours. It's time you take charge of your learning. Visit us today to get started.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with the professors. That's Professor Bishop, Professor Washington, and Professor Drew. As we get going into this next segment, let's get into week 5.
Dr.
Get some
Cavil.
thoughts on that. Before we do that, I do know that Drew wanted to have a particular question in terms of our closing segment from one of those that gets into it. So go ahead, bring that to the table.
And during that break, I received a text message from the executive director of the Cricket BX Challenge kickoff and the Cricket Celebration Bowl, along with the Red Lobster Band of the Year.
Good job, Drew.
Yes.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah. This comes from John Grant. Dr. Cavil, I thought these were weekly snapshot rankings. How do teams that did not play rank higher than those who did play?
It is a week, and good question. Each voter particularly has their measure in terms of how they see week to week. So I think that's contextually important for each of the individuals doing the ranking, how they see that. In some ways, this is similar to what you do to the band of the year. While you look at components of how people receive the band of the year, you see that same thing in a football ranking when you don't necessarily have your head-to-head matchups. But while some people look at week to week specifically in terms of matchups and what did teams play, so you saw that a little bit in terms of South Carolina State losing big, and potentially why they fail. But some folks may have dropped them even further than 3, may have dropped them to the 4th spot, which puts, even though a team didn't play Alabama State, if they remain the same by the numbers that takes place and the number of voters, it could potentially kick them up, but it may not be enough that drops South Carolina State to the, further than, in this case, the 3 spot to the 4th spot. So sometimes you see that, even though it's week to week, there is the data metrics of how far does somebody want to drop somebody in a week. And you have different voters that see it differently in terms of that. That's why I try to put out there a little bit about South Carolina State, because some people will go back and look differently about a matchup 2 weeks ago. Even though they're looking at week to week, they still kind of look at things overall and say, hey, maybe South Carolina State is not quite as strong, particularly how a team lost, even though it's the FBS. You get credit when you play them close. Sometimes you get hit when you
play
them gets away. So that's the way to explain. So glad we have those type of questions. Anytime, bring them in. We try to do that to our lab listeners as they interchange this dialogue with one another. And sometimes they put it out to us, so we put that up there. So appreciate it. Continue to text, continue to post, and we'll give you those updates. Looking at week 5 for the major division, week 4 for the mid-major division. I know that's something that drives Brian crazy, but we're going to continue with it. I was trying to figure out, Charles, who to start with. What is the big matchup? And I said, hey, we just did the top 7. So oftentimes I do this, but it even seemed to make sense today. Let's start with the number 1 ranked team. They're going on the road to Southern, to Baton Rouge, Capital versus Capital of Jackson, Mississippi, Capital of Mississippi, Capital of Louisiana, in the city Baton Rouge. We have Jackson State Tigers 2-1, and Southern Jaguars that are just 1-3. Some people question they made moves in terms of the staff. We'll see what that means in terms of what it takes in this matchup. This goes back and forth. Big brands in terms of championships years. Southern is a little bit somewhat on hard time in terms of getting a championship. They've been in the mix now in terms of the championship game, but have not been able to stamp it out in a while, particularly since things have been played on campus. So, Charles, I'll start with you in terms of this Jackson State Southern matchup. What should we think?
I've always been taught defense and a running game, they travel. They always pack the bag. So in that regards, Jackson State has checked the box on both of those. But I've also been told there's a point all streaks come to an end. So I think it makes for a compelling storyline when you take a look at Jackson State getting on the road, going down to Baton Rouge. Got a lot of Jackson State fans. I know they'll be hitting the road, heading down to Baton Rouge this weekend. But I think it's a very intriguing matchup, especially when we take a look at what's going to happen with Southern in regards to their quarterback situation. Who will get the start? Who has been the person who I think is doing well in practice this week? I think that's going to be huge. But, Southern has a running game as well. A lot of interesting storylines in this football game.
And Charles, this one counts. Last 2 years they rotated off the conference and they played anyway because of the financial and the history and tradition of those two playing against each other. So they did the non-conference matchup, if you would. But this year it counts in the standings, so it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like. Let me go to you, Drew, in terms of your thoughts on this match.
This is going to be a test for Jackson State over the next 3 weeks or so.
Yep.
Obviously, Southern is Southern. We really don't need to say anything when we talk about the Jaguars and the Tigers matching up with each other. And just sidebar, when you throw the band component into that matchup is one of those that becomes second to none. All right. Then you've got the two Alabama schools, if you're Jackson State. Not a stretch in which you can relax. By whoever did the schedule, perfect time to take the bye so that you could get healthy if you have any nicks and dings, because these next 3 weeks are going to be a monster if you're Jackson State before you get another opportunity for a bye. So let's see how this segment goes for the Tigers there, and see if they're still sitting at the number one slot, or after a couple of weeks, will we start, especially in the East, where ABB, BBC, and CBA type situation that we're potentially going to have, because, we talk about that, but then coming out of that next bye, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but then you got a Grambling State team who no one can lay a finger on. And then you've got a FAMU team who we've been waiting for the light bulb to get switched on for this FAMU team. So let's see how Jackson State does in this end of September into October stretch.
Mike?
So you talked about the Jackson State Southern, so I'll talk about the State Fair Classic. You have basically, and I'll talk a few, details. You got, in terms of scoring offense, you've got number 4 against number 6 in the SWAC. Rushing, you've got number 2 leading offense to this point, rushing in the SWAC against number 3, Prairie View number 2, Grambling number 3. But if you look on the other side of the coin, you have one team that has not to this point been as effective defensively against the run, and that's Prairie View. And you've got Grambling, arguably, who's been a little bit more effective. And then you look at passing. And then you say, well, Prairie View's number 4, whatever. Grambling does not rank as high in the passing game, a little further down the road. And you look at who's number 1 against the passing, and Prairie View is. So this is not just a game to see who is the one up in the West, at least to that point. It's also to see who's going to be able to be disciplined from start to finish, who's going to invoke their type of game. Both have played in games where both coaches have said, we should have done this, we should have done that. So I think there are a lot of things other than outside of who's right now the top runner in the West, at least through that week. there are a lot of other things that both teams have to answer for that. So for that reason, that's the other key matchup that I'm looking at. The other one, is always the bands and all of that good stuff. But there are a lot of multiple subsets and factors, data points, micro data points, and sub-micro data points that I'm looking at in this game.
Sub-micro.
Sub-micro. He got in there. How you just going to skip all the way down to 8 versus 9? Oh, so, AD Drew, go to the slide with 8 versus 9. So Big Mike can see that I at least had it on the radar. Boy, I tell you, Mike does his own thing all the time. One of these kids are not like the other.
Yeah, I got it. Exactly.
Charles, any thought on this matchup? And then we'll go to quickly a couple of more of them so we can get it.
No, I think this is a tremendous matchup in terms of who is ready to make the next step. Is Grambling, are they back? I think that was both teams have very impressive out of conference victories, and I made that point last night with Coach Jackson. How important it is to get these out of conference wins, and he just talked about with regards to Northwestern State, the competition they played out of conference made them faster, made them a different team, and in turn, it's going to make Prairie View a better team. So you got the same sort of micro subset thing going with Grambling as well.
See? Catchy word, huh?
It was sexy.
Worked out well. Hey, let's go to this next matchup, top 10 matchup ultimately. Eastern Division side, since we just came out of the West, which is number 2 Alabama State Hornets versus number 10 Florida A&M Rattlers. Questions in terms of whether Alabama State should be that high, number 2. FAMU, Drew talking about how difficult it was to get that final team in the 10 spot, essentially. They're outside receiving votes to get in the top 7. But if nothing else, this is the Eastern Division matchup. Alabama State has not had success against FAMU, even less in terms of going down there to Tallahassee. But you have the Hornets coming in at 2-1, feeling good about themselves. They were off an extra week to prepare with FAMU as well, having an extra week off. 10 versus 2. Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
Let's hope the mystique of Bragg Stadium holds for Florida A&M, because at one point in time you were so worried if you were an opponent going into Bragg. Well, we see what happened with that last year, and we've seen what has happened subsequent to that. And then you have an Alabama State team who has showed, as long as we have a healthy body, no pun intended, we have a chance to really run up the points against you. So would not surprise me to see a road upset. I don't want to hear it, Rattler folks. I need y'all to come to reality. That this could be a precursor to Alabama State becoming that contender, that top contender for the Eastern Division title, or it could be Florida A&M saying, "Not so fast, my friend," to quote Lee Corso, and reestablishing themselves as a team that will be a player when it comes down the stretch in the SWAC East. But I'm actually leaning Alabama State in this particular matchup.
I like that. Good points there. Let me go to this next matchup, if you would. And
I want to bite of that one.
All right, go ahead, Charles.
I think you and AD, you talked about Jack State over their 3-game stretch, but to me, Alabama State, there's no team that has more pressure in HBCU football than Alabama State over their next 3 games. I mean, when you take a look at this is a huge prove it to me game. And as you mentioned, they finally have all the pieces in place. Their body is healthy. They have the defense, championship level defense, but they're going to one of the hardest places to play in all of HBCU football. This could be a huge statement victory for Alabama State. Then they host Bethune-Cookman at home the following week. And then they've gone to Jackson and they've won before. So this is a huge 3-game stretch for this Alabama State program. And it starts here this weekend Can they actually get it done? And I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, there have been several teams that have gotten over the hurdle. Could Alabama State be that next team to get over the hurdle this weekend?
This is their "What's Your Excuse Now, Roy" tour. That's the way I look at it. For those of you young enough, when Tarver, the boxer Tarver was playing going against Jones, boxer. Tarver had lost, and he finally, Jones, who was the best pound for pound boxer, had won, and now he went up against him and said, "Well, this was the excuse. We didn't have this. We didn't have that. We didn't have this." For years, Alabama State said we didn't have all the pieces. We didn't have this piece. We missed this piece. To me, I agree with Chuck. They got all the pieces now. So now you look at Alabama State and say, "What's your excuse now, Roy?" So,
oh, that's crazy. Let's go to number 3. We're gonna get a chance to really break this down on Thursday, so I don't want to spend a lot of time. I just want to acknowledge these top 7 matchups, if you would. You have 3 versus going outside of the conference matchup. South Carolina State, Charleston Southern, that's 0-4. You imagine South Carolina State is going to find a way to do it. It is a road game, so those are always tough. Let's go to number 4 matchup, if you would. That's North Carolina Central.
Intriguing.
3-2, East Texas A&M Lions. I played them a couple of years ago. In terms of what this looks like, they're going on the road. Relatively long trip when you think about it in terms of traveling to Texas. We've seen what Grambling been able to do in this matchup, but I'm kind of intrigued to see what this looks like. These Lions are 0-3, but they've showed you that they've kind of had the moxie to stay in the game, so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. At number 5, again, we'll take a deeper dive on these, so check us out on Thursday when we start really looking at the weekend. But I just wanted to show you what was on. This becomes a conference matchup. Tease this out a little bit. You have number 5, Alabama A&M Bulldogs. They take that number 5 ranking on the road to Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. Both of them are feeling good, beat up on Division II programs. Bethune-Cookman got that early win. They have played 2 FBS programs, one of them being Miami, which a lot of people after what Miami did last night are seeing them even more so as a top 5, if not higher, type of team. So it's interesting to see kind of what that looks like. At number 6, we go to Howard Bison. They had Richmond Spiders. Spiders are 2-2. Now, this is a program that was in the Colonial, but they've moved out to the Pioneer Football League as they're transitioning out. So it'll be interesting to see what this looks like. Can Howard take the momentum they've having this far? Go on the road, tough place always to play in terms of on the road. Richmond get that victory, so I'm interested in that. And number 7, if you would, is Delaware State Hornets at Sacred Heart Pioneers. Both teams are 3-1. Pretty solid. Delaware State has found ways to win. They got to do it on the road. This is a Sacred Heart team that has won in terms of other MEAC matchups. So I'm kind of interested to see, can we get some data points in terms of Delaware State being solid beyond what other MEAC teams were able to do. So I'm interested in there. So I want to talk about that. A couple of other matchups I just want to shine some lights on. I don't want to get into it. We talked about this 8 versus 9, intriguing in so many different ways. This is on the west side. Somebody gets to take a major step forward. Prairie View is in a early stage when a couple of weeks they play Southern, not to get ahead of stuff, but imagine if they're able to get through Louisiana undefeated, what would that look like in terms of folks being even more excited about Prairie View as they come in? Or will Grambling say, hey, we're back? The G wants to make the statement. Had some classic matchups in the last couple of years between these two. Grambling got over the hump, as you're talking about, getting that victory. Prairie View found a way to get back on that as they have dominated this series as of late. Then you have another matchup. Let's keep going. Norfolk State Spartans on Wagner. Wagner is 0-4. This is one that you talking about the FCS going into the NCC. Norfolk State played relatively close in terms of the Sacred Heart matchup, lost by 3. I think some people were pleasantly surprised about that. It'd be interesting to see, can Spartans get back to their winning ways? You would think the Wagners would be the elixir in terms of what that looks like. We have our mid-major matchup next when you talk about Miles Golden Bears and Morgan State Bears. Miles Golden Bears are 0-4. Drew told everybody that would listen to him that this is not the Miles Golden Bears that we've come accustomed to over the last couple of years. And Morgan State Bears got a victory last weekend, so they may continue to roll as they're on their Division II schedule part that they're doing, and they're showing them how they feel about them and getting it done. So I'm intrigued about what that looks like. Talking about that, shout out to Benedict. You got a big win over Tuskegee. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday. This is a program that dipped down, so I only bring that up. Can Miles coach, even though they're on the slide, can they find a way next year to bring them back up quickly? We'll see what that looks like, and we'll see if in a lot of ways can Benedict continue to push forward as they got that big victory. Next one is the Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions in terms of that matchup against Alcorn State Braves. Fascinating to see what that looks like. Both teams need a victory. This is another one in terms of the West Division. Quietly, somebody is going to get a chance to get their first victory, maybe feel better about themselves. We'll see what that looks like. The last one I think we got here is one is intriguing, particularly Charles. I'll give him the touch on this just a little bit because he gets to call this game. So fascinating to see what he's going to be looking at because I'm sure he started doing his homework. We'll, again, take a deeper dive on Thursday for everybody involved. But Texas Southern 0-3, Mississippi Valley 0-3. Both of these teams need a victory. This is a cross-divisional matchup. So somebody is going to get a head start in terms of their SWAC race. Charles, what are you looking in as you're starting to ask questions, pulling data for this matchup?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that both coaches have talked about, even their SWAC pressers, is in terms of just finding the right 22 to be on the field. And I think you're still defining some of those roles. So this is one of those games. Both teams have had a week off now, and they get an opportunity to really kind of figure out if they made some adjustments within the film room to get the right individuals out there, find some playmakers. I think that's the big thing for both of these teams in this game. So it'll be an intriguing from that standpoint, especially talking to them in the week in terms of here's the individuals that I really think are going to do something within this game. So I'm looking forward to calling this game, going up to Itta Bena. A little bit of history for myself. So my dad's alma mater. So looking forward to calling that game.
Mike, don't do your don't do your thing. It's too early.
I'm not gonna say. I ain't gonna say nothing. Not gonna say nothing.
But Drew, give your final thoughts in terms of as we get into week 5. What are you looking forward to?
Look forward to finally some of these games count, Dr. Cavil, when it comes to at least in the SWAC conference. That a lot of these games will count. I think. Yeah, every game that we're playing counts in SWAC. So that's really going to be interesting. Let's also keep an eye on the BAC. The BAC right now, and everybody has to remember this, the BAC is playing for FCS playoff positions also. Because we know where the conference champion goes. We know the conference champion is going to the Celebration Bowl. But not only for the number 2 team, but the BAC record overall against other FCSs is going to determine if the BAC is going to be able to get a team as an at-large into the FCS playoffs. We know they're not gonna play it at home. They're not gonna let a BA go to a HBCU to play a home playoff game. But the fact you get an opportunity to get into the tournament. So let's just keep that in mind with these last couple of weeks of BAC non-conference play. This is something that they are really trying to get taken care of. And last thing, Circle City Classic.
Yes.
Morgan, Miles, Circle City Classic.
Interesting. Good one. Good point.
Yeah.
Mike, final statements. And I like what you said there, Drew, in terms of breaking it down. Playing for those additional spots, especially when you think about the Ivy League now has decided to participate in the FCS tournament. So that's a spot that usually would go to at large that may not go now. Well, will not go now. So that's interesting. Mike, any final thought?
Yeah, a couple of things just to build off, what Drew said is that in the SWAC, this to me is the first week that we've had circled and it gets real. If you look at the matchup, and you're gonna start to see some points of distinction, a couple of more what I call really key data points in the SWAC. I don't want to disregard the MEAC because Drew talked about playoff spots, but I know Dr. Ville hates me to use this term, eye test. But you got like Delaware State playing Sacred Heart. You got Norfolk State playing Wagner. Howard playing Richmond, which, Vegas has Richmond winning. No matter how well are these teams in this week 4 or 5, depending on where you're at, how well are these teams going to stack up against them? How are they going to look playing these teams to me as well? Yes, some may lose, some may stay, but now, you've got an Texas A&M team playing on, this third HBCU. How is North Carolina Central going to look playing this team? So yes, it is to a certain extent about playoffs, but do these teams in the MEAC, do they look to meet the eye test as after that they go with more deeper into their conference? So to me, it's, in the SWAC, you're starting to see some separation, or at least the beginning stage of separation. Whereas in the MEAC, I'm like, which teams really meet the eye test as they play outside their conference?
So East Texas is the new McNeese for HBCU opponents.
I was asking that. I was like, are they the new McNeese?
Well, let's get out of here on this note. Those games that don't count and do count were interesting because it was tough on in the CIAA. Credit to Virginia Union going to get the win against Johnson C. Smith, 28-10.
Yeah.
It counted for Johnson C. Smith, so that's a loss. It did not count for Virginia Union, but I'm sure that's intriguing. And then you had the same thing in terms of Virginia State and Winston-Salem State. Virginia State getting a tough, close win in terms of defeating Winston-Salem State, 34-33. Counted as a loss for Winston-Salem State. Does not count for a win, so I'm intriguing how that looks. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday as we can see if we can get AD Drew back in here and talk about some of the key Division II matchups and conference games that took place in the SIAC and CIAA. We might even bring in Stephen J. Gaither in terms of his thoughts on that. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from Inside the Lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Again, thank you for listening. Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday. Oftentimes we have AD Drew making sure that he's part of the team. Certainly on Sunday, we love to give you see your top 7, set you up for the major division, get you ready for mid-major division on Tuesday. And then we do analysis on Thursday and we set it over again. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Threads, Facebook, and Instagram, DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Facebook and on YouTube, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, as you know. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Mike?
Lecture.
Drew?
Gotta find me some coffee, y'all.
No, stop.
Dismiss.